All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nick Carrier's Best You podcast. Today, I'm super excited to bring on the one and only Mel Abraham. Mel, I just want to start off by saying thanks so much for spending the time with me today.
Oh my God. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, man, of course. So I'm super fired up because money is something that I've begun to learn more and more about over the last couple of years. It was something that I wasn't initially super motivated by money. I was super motivated by passion, but I've gotten more and more motivated by money, but also just because of not for money itself, because of what money can do and provide for you and for the people that you love and things of that nature. And so you're a CPA by education, like you say, but an entrepreneur by exhilaration. But I don't really want to start there. Actually, I kind of want to go into something different because I learned that you were a director and chief instructor at Puma Karate, a martial arts studio, and you're also the director and founder at the Save Foundation, which was established to educate, assist, and train people, primarily women and children, related to abuse and violence. And so there's some sort of passion that you have around this idea of martial arts and self-defense. And so I'm really interested as to where that came from.
Wow. Okay. So interesting. Both of those. So I had owned my school for 11 years, but I got involved in the martial arts primarily. So I didn't know what martial arts was. I mean, I knew what it was, but I never really took it. I wanted to do judo because I saw a judo demonstration when I was a kid. My mom was like, I'm not going to let my kids learn how to fight. So she thought we'd be fighting all the time. And little did she know that once I started the martial arts, I got in less fights than I did then before. But I would happen to be walking through a parking lot, and there was a guy that was walking through the parking lot, putting flyers on cars with a T-shirt that said Karate Do Academy on it. And I stopped him, and we started chatting. We ended up chatting for a while, and he ended up becoming my very first instructor. And
This
and
was when
all
you were how old?
I was in my teens,
Okay.
and so what I did, I was looking for, I knew that I wasn't going to be big enough to play football in college. And so I was looking for another form of exercise. And I said, so it was literally probably a month and a half, 2 months after I'd met him in the parking lot that we went to the dojo and walked in, and he recognized me and he remembered my name. And we chatted, and I go, oh, there's something about this guy. And so I got my first black belt under him and Sensei Nishiyama. And so that kind of started the journey in the martial arts, but I fell in love with the martial arts. I fell in love with the discipline of it and the what it all stood for, the traditional martial arts, the martial way, if you will, to do that. And then during my tenure, so I lived and trained in Japan starting, I went there the first time in 88, 89, and spent time there training with a new instructor in a Japanese style of jujitsu. And he was a 17th generation bloodline of samurai bloodline. And so I trained very, very traditional in the martial ways. And then I came back and decided that I wanted to open up a school. So I started the martial arts studio, and it was there that caused me to, I was doing a lot of training on self-defense and teaching people protective details. I was doing guarding work and that kind of thing for a little while. And this is interesting because no one usually walks down this path with me. And I had a young lady who trained with me. She was a black belt, and she was a phenomenal fighter. And she could fight with any of us and was amazing, and a beautiful young gal. And she came in on a Monday, I remember, and we had sliding glass doors on the office. So it was a see-through office, but she came in, she closed the door, and she just broke down crying and said, can I speak to you? And I said, sure. And I said, what's going on? And she tells me that she went to a party over the weekend, and that at the party, someone slipped something into her drink, and she woke up not remembering a thing, sexually assaulted. Mm-hmm. And it was that moment where I kind of talked to my instructors and said, we're doing a disservice here. We're making a mistake. We're teaching people how to defend themselves. But if they're not aware of the threat before they have to defend themselves, they're still in danger. I said, if they would have drugged me, they could have raped me too. And I said, so I then started studying and understanding how prevalent it is, the domestic violence and rape and abuse against children. And it floored me. But I did, going out and teaching self-defense was one thing. I said, how about we educate people? How about we teach people that no is a complete sentence? How about we teach people to not do these things that what a true man is like, and those kinds of things. And so it was through that I created a charitable foundation, and it was based on the teaching principles of a friend by the name of Gavin DeBecker, who wrote the book A Gift of Fear. And he was a violence psychologist. So he talked about the psychological elements and indicators of incidents before they became the reality. And so I would go through the organization, I would go into high schools, I would go into elementary schools, I go into colleges, and I would speak about it to try and educate people about this thing. Self-defense it happens to be the last resort. What I really need is that they understand and they recognize that they put themselves in a precarious position, or that they see it's a precarious position and they could avoid it before it gets to anything. And so that's kind of the genesis of the whole SAVE Foundation and that work.
Wow. I didn't know we were necessarily going to go here or there. That I absolutely love it, but now I'm curious. For those people listening, like you said, it is more prevalent than any of us, or a lot of us might know. What are like two things that you would go to people and teach in regards to how you can make sure that you're educated on how not just to defend yourself, but that you're not, or you're not as vulnerable in the first place, I guess?
Well, I think the first thing a guy needs to understand, a guy and a girl, but a guy needs to understand, and a woman needs to understand, is that no is a complete sentence. Once she says no, you're done. It's not the beginning of a negotiation. It's not a ploy. It's not any of that. Whatever you think it is, it doesn't matter how much alcohol has been served. It doesn't matter any of that. And if you do one thing beyond that, effectively you're rape. It's rape. At least at the fundamental level. If we don't listen, that they need to understand that there is a level of respect that needs to be there. And it's not a game, because these things scar people for the rest of their lives. And so you may think it's fun and games in college or high school and all that stuff. It's not. That's not the way we do this. So I think that's one of the first things to understand. The second is to realize that most often it's not a random act. It's a chosen act. For instance, there's something called forced teaming, which is something that Gavin DeBecker talks about in his book. Forced teaming is a psychological thing that they do. Like, so you say you're walking out of a grocery store, and which, if you go to grocery stores now, everything's delivered now. But if you're walking out of a grocery store and you have dog food in your bag, and someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, we have a dog, do we?" Well, the way that is phrased seems innocent, and it may be truly innocent, but the effect it can have psychologically is it creates a relationship that doesn't exist. It creates a familiarity at a deeper level that doesn't exist because of using we have a dog. So there's this commonality in a dog and we, and all of a sudden you feel that type of connection, or that's the way that it's used. I think the second thing to realize is that we suppress, and you can call it gut, you can call it intuition. but society has done a really incredible job of suppressing the gut instinct or the intuition, the feelings of the unconscious mind, the unconscious messages that are coming to us. And the things like saying to don't be silly, don't, and one of the things that I would tell women, I said, especially, and my wife is phenomenal at doing this. Okay. But especially, you're traveling, and so you're going to get into an elevator. And there's something about this guy or person, whatever it is, that makes you feel uncomfortable. But what we typically do is say, oh, don't be silly. And we go ahead and get an elevator. Well, let's look at what the elevator is. The elevator is a steel box that is soundproof, exit proof, entry proof, if they want it to be. And yet you just went into that box when you feel uncomfortable. So I'm saying, and why do they do that? Because we were told, pardon the expression, I don't know the language on the show, but you don't want to be seen as a bitch. You don't want to be seen as a jerk. You don't want to judge people. You don't want to, those kinds of things. But you know what? I'd rather you be alive and be judged than not.
Yeah.
And if that means that you take the next elevator, or my wife has actually, someone actually got on an elevator with her, and he said he saw her and she was at a conference, and she got in the elevator, and as the doors were closing, he put his hand in the door, stopped the doors from closing. He says, "I'll ride up with you." And she put her hand on the door and she goes, "Oh, no, you're not." Off the elevator, threw his butt off the elevator. Wow. And so I think that we need to, in those cases, those are some of the things that I would teach, or I would tell people. And it's not about, oh my God, they're going to think I'm a jerk. No, I'd rather you be alive. I'd rather you be safe. And I hate to say it, we live in a society that sometimes there's some bad people. All in all, most people are good, but there's some bad people, and we just need to be smart. Yeah. We just need to be smart.
Control what you can't control, and just try to make sure you're in not those vulnerable situations as much as you can, and you avoid those. Well, that's awesome stuff. I love that story, and glad that we got into that. But I do want to transition a little bit into some of the money talk. And so I think one of the things that I think is kind of harmful in our society, again, is that people are uncomfortable talking with friends and family about money. Yeah. And so I'm interested, should we feel uncomfortable? Should it be a soft topic? If not, what sort of things should we be talking about? What sort of conversation should we be having? Or maybe what should we not be having?
So I think in general, people don't want to talk about money. It's a taboo subject. But here's the thing. I truly believe in the work that I've done over the years on myself, with my clients, with my one-on-one clients, in my programs. I've noticed something, and it's proven out over and over again. Most money issues are not money issues. They're money symptoms. They're symptoms of behaviors and habits that you have. Mm. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. You think you have a money problem, but you don't have a money problem. You have a behavior problem or a habit problem. The good news is that means that you can change the behaviors or change the habits. That means that once we change them, the symptoms change, the money problem changes. And so, but the challenge with that is this: no problem that I know of has ever actually been solved without a conversation, without discussing it, without having conversation around it, especially in relationships. And family dynamics can be an issue, but especially in relationships, if we're not having conversations around the money part of the relationship, not for the sake of money for money's sake, but what, like you said, the tool it is, the thing that it allows us to do. But if I see money as this demonized thing that is only for the greedy and for people that are going to take from others and just to be selfish. And I have a spouse that sees money as a tool to move missions forward, to create movements, to get behind causes. What kind of conflict is that going to create? And we all come to a relationship with money junk. We come to it because we don't have these conversations. And the only place that I say that your money stories, they're not taught, they're caught. In other words, that we pick them up through observation of what our parents did, what the media is saying, what the social media is saying, what everyone around us is saying, because we never sat down and said, hey, did you know if we actually just put $50 away a week, we could, and we'd started early enough and did it regularly enough, $50 a week could turn into millions. And if we just had those conversations, we would inform, empower, and equip people. And it's not about the millions that matter. It's about what we can do with it, the reality of how that is wielded. Now, let me go to this other question. Sometimes in family, you may not be able to have the conversation. I have family members that they see my life, and I live a good life. I live a blessed life, but I work for everything. I came from a white collar family. I earned it all. Now, I don't gloat it. I don't talk about it much. I don't show it off, but we live comfortably and we give a lot and we take care of a lot and we have a lot of impact. We do those things, and I do those quietly. Because they're not, I don't want to display it. Now, someone else might want to display it, but some family members don't see it that way. They see it in a different light, and that's their money issues coming through. And if they're not willing to have those conversations, and it's not about having the conversations to bring them to your side or your way of thinking. It's about having the conversations so they clarify and get a clear understanding of the stories going on in their head and why they see it the way they see it. And so sometimes, when I draw like a target with my connections, and there's that inner circle. Those are the people that at 3:00 in the morning, they'll get there. That you can tell them that your dirty, darkest secret and vulnerability, and they're there for you. They're also the same people that will kick your behind in a loving way when you need it, but they're not going to just say yes. And those people in that inner circle may sometimes not be family. And it may be hard for some people to understand, but it's true. Some of my family members are not in that inner circle. Some of my family members are in that inner circle. But that's a coveted spot that needs to be earned in your life. And it's not done just by blood or birth. It's done by earning it.
Yeah. No, I think that was really key. Early on, you talked about how having the conversation is super important so that you can educate, empower, and inform and equip people so that they realize that, like, look, if you do $50 a week, every single week over a long period of time, like, you can actually build a lot of wealth. And I thought that was key. And then I really thought it was key around, like, it's not like everybody that you want to have this money conversation with. You have to make sure you have it with the trusted individuals in your inner circle. So I thought that was key as well. One of the things that you said that I've heard you say before and that I absolutely love is that most money issues aren't money issues. They're symptoms of kind of like behavioral and habit issues. And one of the things that you say can help ensure that you don't make bad money decisions based off of negative emotional issues is automating your finances. And so based off of that, what are some automations that we should be doing? Like, what are the different automations that we should have in place with our money?
So first things first, here's what happens when we're making financial decisions, investment decisions, or anything. When our emotions go up, our intellect goes down. Yeah. So our financial smarts just tank when we make it from an emotional place. So a couple things from an automation standpoint. I believe that, one, we all need, I know people talk about emergency fund. I call it a peace of mind fund, but you need that cushion. And And so I use high yield cash accounts. These are not, they're not, they're high, let's say higher yield cash accounts than a savings account. They're not high yield. I mean, they're earning you 0.5% these days, or 0.6 or something, but it's better than your 0.03. Okay. But they're fully liquid, they're fully insured, and there are no fees, and you'll at least earn something in them. And so one of the things that we do is make sure that if I need to accumulate $2,000 in an account to have there for an emergency fund or a peace of mind fund, and I can only do it at $50 a month, then I'm going to have an automatic transfer that automatically goes at the first of the month, 15th of the month, 10th of the month, wherever you set it, to that high yield cash account, out of sight, out of mind. I want it out of the way and not in your spending account where the expenses are. If it's in the spending account, there's too much tendency to spend it. My wife loves to bake. She loves to cook. And we have this like cake plate on the counter with this glass dome over it. And she'll bake stuff, and she bakes some amazing stuff. No sugar, no, all that stuff because of my cancer journey and all that. And she puts them in this glass bowl, and it's sitting there with this cover on, just like you would see in a deli or a bakery and everything. And every time I walk by it, I go, just a little piece. And I take a little piece. That's the same thing with your money. If it's sitting in the account, there may be a tendency to go, I got the money. All right, screw it. I'm just going to go buy that. And before you know it, you overspend. Before you know it, you don't have the money to pay your bills. Before you know it, you're starting to dig into credit cards because you spent it on something that wasn't there. So I say you automate it and get it out. That's one. Two, I want people to start exercising their investing muscle. Remember, if we said that it's a behavior, it's a behavior. And so we need to create a better behavior, a habit of investing. Now, you may not have very much money to invest, so you don't invest now. You just create a second high yield cash account, and you automatically transfer money. We did this. I started this with my son when he was 13 years old, because I was giving him a commission, basically, and $50 of that commission was always going into a savings account. Do you know that today, that same $50 is still being transferred? He's 31 years old now. Yeah, it's just on automatic, and in the background, it's happening. Plus he has other things that he's doing, but in the background, it's happening. You get in the habit, and so even if it's a $5 transfer, I just want you in the habit, because 5 will turn to 10, which will turn to 20, will turn to 40, will turn to 80 and 160 and 320 and on and on and on. The fact is that once we develop the habit and we remove the friction of doing it, in other words, if you had to write a check every time or call the bank every time or do any of that or log in every time, there's friction to doing it, then the likelihood of staying on that habit is less. So we want to automate that and make it happen. Debt payments. I will automate my debt payments. Now, I don't have any real debt, but I'll automate the debt payments just to know that everything is just, what I want to do is try to create a system where as much of my financial life is done on autopilot and not by choice, not by effort. The reason I was looking for a credit card, but the reason we have credit cards, yes, they wanted to give us credit, but the reality is, and this is a mistake most people will get caught up in, don't ever, 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 ever get caught up in the payment game. That's a mathematical game you will lose. Because the reason they do the payment game, if you bought a car, if you go on a car lot, but one of the first questions they ask you is, what kind of payment are you looking for? See, they know that if they can talk at a level of payments, they can manipulate the mathematics so they make their money, and you think you can afford it, and you stack payment on payment on payment, and all of a sudden you're deep underwater in payments. And why that is important, why that's important with credit cards is that what the credit card does is it removes the friction from your buying decision. So here's what I want to do. I want to remove as much friction from my investing and wealth building, and I will put as much friction in my buying as possible. So things like, do not store your credit cards in freaking Amazon, because you're going to go on there and just go, yeah, all right, buy. Okay. If every time you needed to do a purchase on Amazon or any other online, you had to go and get your credit card and put it in, unless you remember your credit card numbers like I do, you would have to go get it. And there's an effort to doing it. Put friction in your buying decisions, you'll buy less. And I've had a lot of people will say, oh, but Mel, I pay my credit cards off every single month. I say, I know. And statistics show that you're actually overspending by 30% because of the lack of friction in your buying decision. And if you don't think that's the case, here's what I want everyone to do for 1 week, and tell me how you feel. All right. Everything you pay for, I want you to pay for it in cash. And you will see psychologically and in your soul what it feels like to start counting out the dollars every time you buy something, whether it's dinner, whether it's clothes, whether it's technology, and you're going, wait, that actually hurts a little more. I'm not ready to do that. And then one other thing to think about, I don't know that this is where you want to go with this question, but is to ask yourself this: how much of my life do I give up to pay for this? Here's what I mean by that. If I believe that I'm earning $100 an hour, then I want to go buy a $2,000 flat screen TV. I always pick on flat screen TVs. I don't know why. So I want to buy a $2,000 flat screen TV, and I earn $100 an hour. That means that I have to give up 20 hours of my life that I will never get back to pay for that TV. Is it worth it? And I'll be the first one to say, I'm never the person. I never tell my clients, well, I can't say never. Most often never tell my clients or anyone not to purchase something. All I want everyone to do is to be fully conscious and fully aware and be completely intentional with what they do. I got plenty of stuff that people go, you bought what? But I was conscious, I was aware, and I'm willing to do it. Okay. And it didn't affect me financially in the sense that I wasn't going to be able to pay the bills. So I didn't go into debt for it. I did it smart. And, but so I'll never tell someone really ever not to buy something, but I just want people unconsciously buy. We can swipe our phone now and we buy and we're done and all that. So what happens is we unconsciously buy things, and we need to stop that, because if we go back to the $50 a week, $50 a week turns into $300,000 or more in a handful of decades.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, that's so much great stuff in there. And, you talked about how you want to increase the friction in order to allow you to buy things, but you want to decrease the friction in order to invest. And I think what people would see very quickly, if they did that exercise for a week or they just did things to increase their buying friction, they would be able to realize, like, oh, I can actually put an extra $100, $200 every single week, every single month. And now I'm going to start automating that and decreasing the friction. And it's like, your whole world's going to be different in 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road.
And it will become easier because you've developed the muscles, you develop the habit. And if you think about the compound effect, so my son's 31, his wife's 28. They just had their first child. They have 3 homes and a multi-million-dollar net worth. Wow. Okay. It's because now, I'm not going to say they didn't push back. My son growing up was, Dad, you're so conservative. You're so conservative. But now he's looking at me going, oh my God. Yeah. Because I'm looking at it going, let's just look at it. There's something called the rule of 72. So rule of 72 says that if you can earn 7% every 10 years, your number doubles. So let's assume that they have a net worth of $2 million and they earn 7% on that. At 41 years old, that $2 million is 4. At 51 years old, it doubles again. It's now 8 million. They don't have to do a thing again. Do the work early, front load your investments early. Let time be the lever on your side. Too often we think we have time. No. Time is your friend. Just get in there early and not think about it. I tell people don't think about retirement as retirement, because you can easily put that off. Think about retirement as peace of mind.
Mm,
That we want today is peace of mind.
yeah, that's great. And a lot of people listening are probably going to think like, dang it, I should have started earlier. But it's like, look, now the best time is to get going
Yes.
right now and start doing this stuff right now. And I can speak from personal experience. I mean, I just bought my first house actually about exactly a month ago now, and I was like making sure that all like the automatic mortgage payments and the power and all that kind of stuff was automatic, because it gives you so much more, like as you said, peace of mind
Yeah.
throughout every single day, every single week, because you're not worrying like, oh my gosh, am I going to forget about this, that sort of thing. And then therefore you can spend your energy in other really useful ways. But I want to make sure I get you out of here on time, Mel.
That's all
One of
right.
the second to last questions I think I want to ask you here is, what is the most important money decision that you made early on in your life or early on in your career, but you didn't realize how important it was going to be until later?
Gosh. I made a lot of bad decisions early on. um, but I think so. I think the biggest thing would be that I was open to learning from those bad decisions and know that I didn't want to duplicate it. So for
What
instance,
was there a particular bad decision that you felt like you learned the most from?
yeah, well, I think early on was debt. Was going into debt and getting caught in that payment game where you start to look at the payments that look small and you go, I can afford it, because you're not thinking about the other payments and you didn't do the work and you didn't do the math. So uh, so I avoided payments as much as possible. Once I got in trouble with credit cards back in the day. So we're going back a ways. Well, I remember both my brother and I got an identical twin brother. So we went to a mall. He was in college. I was in college. He was in college in San Diego. I was in college up here. And I was down visiting him in San Diego. We went to one of the malls there and we literally went from store to store applying for store credit cards.
Wow.
And back then they would give it to us. And so we ended up with like 6 or 7, 8 credit cards. We go, and then they turn around and do this. And on your first purchase, you're gonna save 10 or 15%. So not only did we get the credit cards, we went and made our first purchase for 10 or 15%. We go, oh, but our credit card limit is like $500. So I should use the whole thing and get the 15% on $500. And all of a sudden, before we knew it, not only did we have credit cards, we had debt and we were buried. And it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And so that's what led me to start to understand things like the emotions of buying, the emotions of investing, the emotions of money don't mix. And that debt, not all debt. I'm not one that says all debt is the devil, but I am saying that all debt costs. It costs in money, but it also costs in stress and strain on you and your emotions. And so that allowed me to start looking at things very, very differently. And I do most everything without debt. The only debt we have is a little bit on the house, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Dave Ramsey, I'm here in Nashville, and Ramsey's here in Nashville as well. And, his whole thing is just about getting all the debt out of the way as quickly as possible. If you look at strictly the numbers of it, there could be other ways to maybe go about it differently from a numbers perspective. But when it comes to peace of mind and when it comes to the emotions of it, like knocking out one debt at a time or just making sure you don't have debt is super, super key. So I wanted to hit on that again, but I also just want to hit on again how you talked about the importance of building your investing muscle, because any kind of habit, you have to build a habit before you optimize it. You have to build the habit of breaking down the friction of investing $10 first before you can invest $100. You have to build the habit of working out for 20 minutes before you think you can work out for an hour and a half. But if you build the habit of showing up to do that particular thing, then you've broken down the friction of taking the action in the first place, and then you can optimize it later. So
without a doubt. And remember that financial independence financial liberation and wealth creation is a long-term game. If you're trying to do it overnight, um, you might. It's not likely, and even if it is, in all likelihood, you won't keep it.
Yeah. Well, and before I ask the last question, just to kind of say on that is, I watched one of your most recent podcast episodes on what to do with your cash, and you kind of give your blueprint in regards to the different steps and stuff like that. And the reason why I bring that up is you say wealth creation is a long-term game, but if you know the framework at an early age, like for me, I learned a similar framework to that probably just a couple of years ago. And just knowing the framework and knowing kind of where things should go and when they should go there and in what order I'm trying to move, like gave me so much confidence and so much peace of mind and just a feeling of freedom as like, okay, I have a solid understanding of what I need to be doing. And I think that's what a lot of people don't have.
It becomes a recipe. And, like any chef, when they first start to want to be a chef, they follow a recipe. Then they can get creative. But they understand the principles. They understand the prescriptions because those don't change. And once we do that, then you live within those principles and prescriptions that you can modify.
Man, that was good. That was good. I like that chef analogy. Well, Mel, before I ask the last question, I want to acknowledge you first for back in the day for recognizing this issue in regards to rapes and violence and abuse and doing something about it, because a lot of people could have been in that room and that woman could have stepped in and they could have had empathy, sympathy for her and not ended up doing anything, but you took ownership of creating a foundation and educating people around how to make sure we minimize these different instances. And then also I want to acknowledge you for giving so much, education and empowerment and equipment, if you will, to people to give them confidence on how to build freedom with their finances and liberation. So it's been awesome. I know I've learned a lot from you, just been doing my research over the past few weeks and stuff like that. So I really appreciate all that you do.
Oh my God. It's been a joy. And I'll tell you, doing this is a gift to me. It's my joy place. It's what I feel like I've been called to do. And I'm going to keep doing it. This is the next phase of my journey.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you guys need to make sure you go follow Mel on Instagram at Mel Abraham. If you have not yet already, where is the other best places to kind of go look for your website and that kind of stuff?
So Mel Abraham 9 on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I also have an affluent entrepreneur Facebook group. We also have for those that might be trying to figure out how to do some of this stuff, because it's a free training. It's a free money plan workshop. If they go to the moneyplanworkshop.com, it's a 7-day training kind of let's do a 7-day crash course on your money game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great stuff. And as we can see in the background, if you're watching on video, he has a podcast, The Affluent
I guess I should
Show.
say about my show.
No, it's all right. The Affluent Entrepreneur Show. And I already referenced one of the most recent episodes that I've watched in regards to what to do with cash. And I've already actually sent it to a couple people, just being like, hey, want to make sure that you kind of understand this and you know this, because it'll give you a lot of freedom, a lot of confidence. I'll probably have that episode linked up in the show notes as well, so people can check it out. But last question, Mel, is I think that getting closer to the best version of yourself is both a constant journey and a unique journey. I don't think we're ever at that best version of ourselves. And then I also think that the way that I'm going to get there is a little bit different than the way that you're going to get to the best version of yourself. So for you personally, if there are 3 things that you can currently do or 3 things that you can currently work on to get closer to that best Mel Abraham that you can possibly be, then what are those 3 things that you can currently do or currently work on?
I think get out of myself in the sense of focus on others, make sure that I'm focusing on others. Focus on gratitude and appreciating what is. Too often, I think we tend to look at what isn't or what could be or what we missed and everything, and then stay in motion. There can be a time in our lives Okay, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want it to come across wrong. I don't necessarily need to work. Okay. So with that, there could be a possibility to say, well, I'm not going to work. But then who am I? Not that my work defines me, but then what am I about? What am I, how am I making an impact? What's the purpose of me being here? And and so I never want to get complacent in life. And I want to consistently grow and keep in motion and not get stagnant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the most famous quotes is "You are what you repeatedly do," and it's you aren't the amount of money you have. You're not your job title. You're not
Yeah.
the number that stay in motion, regardless of whether or not you might need, that the finances part of it. But three great things, Mel. Really, really appreciate you today. I know a lot of people got a lot of value from this, and that's all we got. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. So good to be here, and I appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.